Welcome to the podcast of K is for Knowledge. Join us for topics about the housing market, world affairs, spirituality, healthy living, mental health, the pandemic, small businesses, entrepreneurship. And here's your host, Queen Sheba.
Hi guys, welcome to the show. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope everybody's having an awesome and marvelous day. I thank you all for tuning in every Thursday as I bring you guys amazing entrepreneurs, business owners, musicians. So just keep tuning in on Thursdays and I will continue bringing you guys amazing guests. So today we have amazing guest, and I'm gonna bring him on so he can introduce himself to the listeners. And thank you guys once again for tuning in, and I really and greatly appreciate it.
Hello.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Great. Can you introduce yourself to the listeners?
Yeah, my name is Ronald May. I live here in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm a retired businessman, and I'm also an author of a book that I just published called Screaming Blackness, which you can see in the background. And I think we're going to discuss more about business today than about the book and poetry. So
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here and joining us. I greatly appreciate it. Before we get into the book, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm 68 years old, so some 50 years ago, I left home when I was 17. I did my time in the military. At that point, we were getting drafted to the Vietnam War. So I did my time in the military, which I didn't care for that much. And then I got out of the military because I got a basketball scholarship when I played for the base team, and then I went to college. But that was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. I went from being kind of a young African-American man without a lot of direction to really learning how to use my mind, and found out that, I was a fairly bright guy. I just didn't have very good skills to display it. And college helped me get those skills. So, there was a time where I dropped all my classes and had to take remedial classes. And that was probably the best thing that I ever did, because once I learned how to read fast and comprehend, college wasn't hard, but it was extremely hard until I took those remedial classes. And then I've had a lot of very fortunate things happen to me. When I graduated from college, I was a psychology major. I was a biology major for 3 years, but then I didn't want to do that anymore. So I swapped over to psychology. And at that time, Xerox was looking for African-American men to work at Xerox Corporation, which was a Fortune 500. And I really had no background and no understanding about what they did, but because I had good grades, they hired me. And that also would change my life, because it taught me a sales process that really applies across life. And so I can use those skills and ability to understand where other people, what they believe and think, and then introduce my product or my thoughts to them after I understand where they're at. And that was very valuable information. So I did that for 8 years. And then the AT&T broke up, and they started hiring people to work in the telecommunications industry. So I switched to the telecommunications industry and sold PBX phone switches for another 8 years. Then Y2K happened, and I switched to that industry and started selling life cycle processing for converting old legacy systems to this new legacy, to the newer software, to enhance their ability and not let the system shut down in year 2000, which didn't happen, but that was the fear that everybody had at that time. So my background is pretty extensive in sales. When you're a Xerox sales rep, you can sell anything because the process applies across all businesses. And so now with 2008, the economy went bad and there were no jobs for a person my age. So I started a small business and became an entrepreneur. I had search firm where I place people at companies like Coca-Cola and Turner Broadcasting Systems. I designed that myself, and even though it was a very small company, I had big clients because I presented myself just like I was a Xerox corporation, even though I wasn't. And
Right.
and they didn't care as long as I conducted myself in a positive, professional way and provided them with people. That's what they really cared about. So I did that, and then now I'm retired, and I'm writing books that are helping African American younger people to kind of challenge their beliefs and their understanding to become more fully functioning human beings. So that's my thrust right now. But when Kay asked me would I talk about business, I said yes, I would do that for you.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Once again, I appreciate you being here.
No
I
problem.
appreciate. So, as an author, where do you get your ideas?
Well, there are probably half of the poems in my book I wrote when I was in college. I was 21, 22 years old, kind of I had my own kind of belief system. So, when you look at life and you say, okay, the scenario that they want me to be under and present myself under, I don't agree with. I don't agree that anybody's better than me or I'm less than. And as my intellect grew and my ability to read and comprehend grew, I knew that was my deficiency. So I don't have that deficiency anymore. And I started to write poetry, defining myself and who I am, and what I want my life to be. So it was millions of those kind of ideas around. You could go to, a seminar where, Shockley and Jensen were race theorists, and they're talking about the superiority of the size of the cranial capacity of white people versus black people. And you look at that and you go, well, there's no support in that. And so I would write a poem about something like that, how that's just not right. That's just not true. And so what we're going to do is live our life about what's true and honest, and not this scenario of hierarchy of different colors of people. And you get your pluses and your minuses from a hierarchy of color, as opposed to whatever your individual capabilities are. And so that was very fertile ground for writing poetry. But I'm a proactive person. I don't dislike anybody, and I don't dislike anybody. So I'm not going to do that. So it's important for me to say what it is that I want to say and respect the other races and get the message across, because the message is more important than spouting some evil nonsense about people that did this to me and did that to me. No one can do anything to me anymore. We have civil rights in this country. And if we believe it, we actually flourish better when we believe it and don't spend so much time on trying to figure out who's right and who's wrong. That's a Ron Mayism.
Got you. Amazing. So basically, your poems is mostly about the things that you experience in life.
Yes, I have a poem in there about when I was in the military. We had a situation where the black soldiers were about to have an upheaval on the base, and they wanted to not let that happen. And we went into the room to talk about that. That's not what they were talking about. There were people in the room who were taking over, trying to actually just get out of their own personal troubles and using that as a forum for that, and not the forum to make life better for all the black soldiers. So I wrote a poem about that called the Del Rio Blues. I was in Del Rio, Texas, with thousands of African-American men in the middle of the desert. And that just was not a good situation because they were all city boys. We're a lot of urban people, and that's a whole different breed when you stick them out in the desert with nothing to do. It gets really crazy. So, and then I actually believe that I have a link to knowledge that comes through me sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I write poems about what my ancient ancestors who want to be remembered want to say, and I get to say it for them because some of the poems come from that perspective. Now, I don't really know that perspective, but all of a sudden I can write it. Like I wrote a poem called Souls Got Ears. And it's a long poem about, what the atrocities of the people crossing the oceans. Don't forget that I crossed this ocean and some of us made it, but we don't want you to forget the tragedy and that we were taken from our country and brought to another country. So that's saying that our history didn't start with America. We were taken from our history and interrupted and became African Americans when we were really people from Africa that were stolen from our land. And that's okay, because now I am an African American. I don't know much about Africa, but I know a lot about wanting to be a proud Black man, and that makes me stretch out and look at Africa. And then I want to be a proud American, so that makes me step out and look at what America is supposed to offer me under the skies of, political legislation, like the Civil Rights Bill, hate crime laws, things like that, anti-lynching legislation. So even something like anti-lynching legislation just got approved again last year. I mean, that was Einstein and I think it was Jackie Robinson who initially started anti-lynching legislation, because when Black people came back from World War II, they started lynching us because we weren't docile anymore, and they wanted to put us back in our place. So I'll write about that, how wrong that is, and how I'm never going to succumb to that. And it's pro-Black. It doesn't have anything to do with anybody else. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. And let me ask you a question. So a lot of African Americans, or let me say Black Americans, when you tell them they're African Americans, why are they so offensive about that?
Well, you have to remember, you have to understand there was a transition. James Baldwin, who was a famous Black author, said that the process to becoming a Black man is not something that you're born with. It's something that you have to discover and understand and grow to it. So when we're disjointed, say the Black experience is a continuum, and you got ones and you have tens. Well, tens know who they are, what they are. They've studied, they've looked at the Black experience and understand that they have to be in control of the daily destiny of their lives. And then you have a one who doesn't really, we were raised to believe the closer that we got to white and took on white characteristics, the better we would do in this society. Well, that didn't work out. So you still have some that are ones when it comes to trying to attach themselves to more of the philosophies of the society for whites. And then you have the tens, and you have everything in the middle. So until you get to where you really do understand that you're just a citizen in this country and not necessarily you're a citizen who happens to be Black. Being a Black citizen, there's no downside to that. But if you think there is, then somebody tried to tell you that you're Black, you're going to reject that information because you think there's something derogatory about that, because you brought into the systematic racism that we were all taught coming up as children. And so there's still a big portion of our population that has not gotten past that. And some of it is because I think something like 50% of African American boys drop out of high school. So when you drop out of high school, the inferiority is going to be a part of your life unless you do something very profound. If you're struggling, how can you not believe you're inferior if there's a world out here where everybody has everything they want and you can't participate in that world? But if you just realize for a second, I can participate in that world if I prepare myself to participate in that world, then it happens for you. And that's my message. Don't look at who you are today. Look at who you want to become, and then start doing the necessary things to become that. If that requires more education or more understanding, like a case in point, when you talk to Black men about Black women, some of them like the features and the look of white women because we were raised like that, to look at the narrower nose and the higher cheekbones as beauty points. Well, as an African American man who was raised under that, I had to sit back and look at African American women and say, what is it about them that I need to look at them? And so I looked very closely, and all of a sudden, those beauty marks and standards started becoming mine. So when I look at an African American woman, I see the beauty in her based on the beauty that I see in myself. But if I don't see the beauty in myself, how am I going to see the beauty in her? So yes, I have a broad nose and I have lips and I got certain cheekbones. But if I don't understand that my naturalness is what I should love, then I'm lost. and I'm in a world that's going to defeat me because I'm not centered in who I am as a human being. So it's just those kinds of things. So when you talk to the ones, the twos, and the threes in the stream of becoming fully functioning African American people, that's going to be a tough conversation because they just don't understand. And that's what Streaming Blackness is about. Read it, and then you'll understand more in an abstract sense. So I can tell you in a poetry way, and then I tell you in a pragmatic way, this is what I believe. And if you find value in it, you'll grow as a human being. And that's what it's all about. So when you talk to nines and tens, they're like, I'm the president of the corporation, and nothing's going to stop me from being that. So,
wow, very deep, very deep. So who has been your greatest inspiration in writing this book?
Oh, it was, for years I wrote and I never let anybody read it. I just wouldn't do it. I was shy and I didn't let anybody read it. And then when I went to San Diego State, there was a lady named Hawita Nash who started a Black school newspaper. And I put 2 poems in her school newspaper, in the school newspaper. And a lot of people started liking it. And then I started getting comments like, if you don't expose this to Black people, then you're just being selfish. And so that I kept hearing that for so long. And then one day I looked up and I said, I wrote this book 40 years ago and I'm going to publish it now. So I took things that I wrote from my days then and wrote some more new stuff for now. And I put it together and I met a publisher lady and an editor who helped me understand how that works. And now I'm an author that gets to talk about my experiences.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. So you say you have been writing for a while. When did you finally step out and say, let me go ahead and write this book. Let me put these poems together and have it published and let the world hear what I got going on?
This book it's been published for about 6 months.
Okay.
It took me from the time I decided I was going to do it. It took about 4 or 5 months to actually pull everything together. And I really didn't know what I was doing. And I met the lady from Rich Relations. She has a book publishing company. And she basically told me, Ron, I really like your work. And I'm going to make sure that you end up with a quality book. And so she guided and directed me until my book was done. And Bakiba was the lady who edited for me. I looked at 4 or 5 different editors, but none of them wanted to talk to me. They just said, send me the book in the email and I'll edit it and get it. And I'm like, how can you edit my work without talking to me? So when I met Bakiba, she allowed me to read my poems to her so she could get a gist of what I felt about each one of them. And then that's why I allowed her to be my editor and my publisher. So, that's one thing that Renee said to me is you cannot do this by yourself. You need a team. So once I got a team, every time I would get stuck, I would call Renee and she would tell me what to do. And then I would just do it. And I would call Bakiba and say, and she would tell me, and then we just kept working it. And one day it went to the editor and then it came back and it went to the guy who does the page layouts. And I was shocked because it came back as a book. And a funny story, I was trying to find the cover. I couldn't find anything that I wanted to do with the cover. So I called up my niece who had graduated from Bowling Green in Ohio and told her I needed a book cover. And I gave her down to the last detail what I wanted. And she says, Uncle Ronald, you don't sound like you know what you want. I'm just going to do something and send it to you. And that's how the book cover was born. She sent it to me first time and I loved it. And that became the book cover after telling me I didn't know what I wanted. I'm still going to get her about that.
That's amazing. And shout out to Makiba because, my full name is Lakiba and my family called me Kiba. Mm-hmm. And my school friends, they could have never get my name right. So they always call me Makiba, Nakiba, everything but my name. So shout out to her.
When you talk to African people, they don't want to tell you their name because they don't think you can say it. But for years, I have made a practice out of listening very clearly when they say their name so I can say their name. And I do that with Indians, Hindus, and Africans because you have to really listen to the nuances. I still can't say Anate Konkupo, Giannis in the prose. not sure if I'm saying that right or not, but it's close.
I'm not even gonna try.
Worked on it for about 6 months before I finally got it.
So during your process of writing this book, which part of the book was your most happy moment? Like made you feel like really, really good? Like, oh my God. Which part was
when the page designer laid out all the pages and it came back and it was a book. I never dreamed, like, I had nothing in my head that could make me dream about what it was going to look like. I just didn't. And
Gotcha.
then when it went to the editor and it came back and she altered some stuff and then I had to approve it. So I approved 90% of what she did and we altered a little bit. And then when it went to the page, the guy who set up the page layout, then it came back and it was a book. It just didn't have a cover. And I almost cried when that came back. That was an overwhelming experience. And then when the book came back and I got my first author's copy, I was just very touched. And it's becoming a journey that I really didn't know that authors get to talk. If people like your book, they want to hear what you have to say and what motivates you. I wasn't looking for any of that, but now I'm getting that, and so it's been my inroads into being able to express these beliefs that I have to young African American men and women, and even older ones. Because one of the things the young people tell me is you're one of the few older guys that will listen and not judge us because of our habits and stuff like that. So I get to go tell the older people, if you want to talk to young people, you have to leave them alone about how they live life, because when we were wearing bell bottoms and hot pants and afros and, we did what we wanted to do. So stop judging them based on how they dress and wear and just talk to them like they have some sense and some value. And you're not trying to take over and guide and direct them in the way that they should go. That I wasn't able to do that when I was young, and people would tell me, do this, do that. Half the time I didn't know what they were talking about because I didn't have the sophistication to understand the sophisticated conversation. And now I get to tell other older people my age, that if you want to help people, stop trying to guide and direct them and just listen to them and help them grow in their own mind and in their own head. And then they'll value a conversation with you.
Got you. Always such great advice. Always. Yeah. So, how far do you see your book going? Where do you want this book to reach?
The more it sells, the bigger that dream gets. It was just I wanted to write a book. Then I wanted to write a book and do appearances and talk about what I wanted to do. And so that's occurring. So, I don't know, the sky's the limit. It's catching on. People are buying it. I get, a ping every time somebody buys it. So I have a friend who's an actor out in California. He put some clothes on and he did his own rendition of a couple of my poems. And, a couple hundred of his friends looked at it and thought, man, where'd you get those poems? And he said it was my book, and they started buying it. So that was an audience that I had no idea that was going to happen. So I see this book, I dream big. So I want to make the bestseller list. I'm looking for somebody to co-sign me, like, Oprah or, Michelle Obama or Barack Obama, to read this book and tell the world they need to read this book. But so far that hasn't happened, but I'm still hopeful that as it gets more and more popular, it might run across some of these people who can just say, I read it and you need to read it because it will help you understand some things about life. One of the first books that I read, there was a book called Empowering Yourself by Harvey Coleman. And I read that as an older adult. If I had read that book when I was 20, 21 years old, I would have done things differently. It talks about how life unfolds. He says there's no bowling alleys in rich neighborhoods because they don't bowl, and there's no polo fields in poor neighborhoods because they don't play polo. So when you tell people things about you, you tell them about your economics. If somebody says, what country club do you belong to? And you say you don't belong to one, they immediately know that you're not rich. So that's what the book talks about, the art of communication and letting people know what you want them to hear. And I had none of that kind of knowledge as a young man, none. And that book, Empowering Yourself by Harvey Coleman, you should just go get it and read it, because the guy did a great job in talking about how life unfolds based on what you think, how you think, feel, and believe, and what you talk about, which is amazing.
Wow.
For me.
Definitely, I will have to check that book out.
Yeah.
Definitely have to check that book out. So who's the ideal reader for your book?
Well, I started out writing it for young Black men. And then my mentor and psychologist, Dr. Chambers, told me, you need to write it for all Black people. So I altered it and started writing it for women. But I kind of want to reach the young mind, where they look at it and go, like there's a poem in there that says, grow old, you Black men, grow old in a world where few Black men have grown old. I want you to read that. And you go, why didn't we grow old? What is the problem with that? And the poem describes that. So, when I started writing for Black men, young Black boys. Then I added women to it. And then I just added Black people to it, because as I kept sharing it with people and my ideas, people who I cared about and valued their opinion would say, you need to broaden that perspective. And so I did. And so now, and then I actually I'm from Springfield, Ohio, and I went to predominantly white schools. So I was never more than 3 Black students in any class that I've ever been, from kindergarten through the 12th grade. And so a lot of my friends that I went to high school with, they're buying the book. One of them told me, he says, Ron, I've known you all my life. I didn't know you went through any of that. So many of my white friends have read the book, and they're saying to me, you're explaining things to me and I don't feel guilty. I don't feel like you're being ugly towards me. It's just information that I can read and expand my horizons into what the Black community and the Black culture is all about. And so I find pride in that. So it's really written for Black people to expand their consciousness, and for white Americans to read it, to try to understand more about who we are as people. And because one of the things that has always caused problems between the races is lack of knowledge and understanding of what the other person is about, as opposed to, be like me. It's like he's being like himself, but we all follow the same rules and regulations in order to have a fruitful society. And that's what I want. So there's as many of white people reading this book as much as Black people. And I want that to continue, because it's really a book designed to help the consciousness of America to grow. And I know that's a big task, but that's why I wrote it. So people can understand my plight, they can apply it to their plight, and then we can all get along a little better, because you know something about me. Like I wrote a poem called The Self-Appointed You, where, because you appoint yourself some vanguard of your community, I can die. Because you call the police because I'm in your neighborhood. And you don't need to do that. So when, different self-appointed people read that, they go, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing that. That guy's just works for UPS, or he's bringing packages out here, or he's cutting grass, or, something like that. But when you see this whole thing about when you see a Black man, you see somebody that you should fear, I don't understand where you get that at all, because there's nothing fearful about me. But I could, I've been stopped by the police and had issues, never been beaten up or anything like that. And I looked at the police and I said, okay, you ran my name on your computer. I don't have any tickets. I don't have anything. So why are you still bothering me? I don't understand it. And so I'm usually, because I'm a pretty friendly guy, I'm usually able to handle that fairly easily. But I also know that if I was a different kind of person that couldn't articulate as well as I can, that could get to be a problem, just because somebody called and reported me about something that I wasn't doing anyway. Like they call that driving while Black, walking while Black, eating while Black, and getting in trouble for doing while Black stuff, which is fundamentally just things that everybody's doing day to day. Except I don't look at this white person and say, why are you in my neighborhood? Let me call the police and get you out of here. And a lot of people, there's a segment of our population that's what they do. And the book helps them understand that that might not be something you want to continue to do because you're wrong in prejudging somebody based on how they look or the color of their skin or whether they're dark or light or, all that nonsense.
Wow. That's really, really something, really something. The times we live in right now, it's not easy. It's not easy. So everybody just gotta stay prayed up.
Yeah, but it's way easier. I was born in 1952. I was born under segregation. And under segregation, it's funny. Sometimes the people that I grew up with, they'll go, "Do you remember when we used to eat over at such and such a restaurant and had the great burgers over there?" And they get mad at me because I tell them, "No, I don't remember that because you're talking about something in 1962 and the Civil Rights Bill hadn't passed yet and I wasn't allowed to go." And they go like, "Ron, when are you going to cut that out?" I'm never going to cut it out because it's just true, and they don't mean anything by it, but they forget. I can't forget that there was a civil rights law. There was a pool in my hometown called the Olympic. And I always thought it was private. In 1964, when the Civil Rights Bill passed, it came out in the paper that it was a public facility and we could go and it cost $0.25 to get in. And it was a wonderful place. But up until 1964, you couldn't go because no black people were allowed. And that wasn't in the South. That was in Ohio. So it's those kinds of things that you look at and you go, it's time to stop thinking like that. It's time for you and me and everybody else to, get along because, when 9/11 happened, all of a sudden we were all Americans because we were scared of more attacks. When the war happened, I go to Vietnam or I go to World War. My daddy fought in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. But he'll still not be able to go do something in this country because he's a black guy and he shouldn't be striving so hard. Well, he never let that stop him. But where does that nonsense come from? I can go risk my life in a war and make it back. And because I now have been to a war and been a soldier and I have pride in myself, I have to get lynched so you can make sure that I stay in my place. Stop thinking like that. Just cut it out, because that narrative is not going to work anymore. But, the president of the United States tried to bring it back alive, and he did a pretty good job at it, but now it's dying again.
The ex-president of the United States.
Yeah. He should be an ex-citizen, but that's a topic.
Yeah, send him back where he came from. Let's send him back.
Right. So, it's like an interesting to me, if I define myself as a fully functioning human being, I don't respond to a lot of nonsense. If someone walks up to me and asks me, "Well, why are you in this neighborhood?" Because I'm in this neighborhood. I'm standing here. What are you talking about? And I really don't understand. I'm not going to understand what I think you're doing. You're going to have to explain to me why you're asking me these questions. And then I'm going to choose to answer them or not answer them based on how I feel about it. And I'm not going to indulge you because you think I should or you think I have to. Call the police. I don't have a police record. They're not looking for me. So call them. And the only thing that's going to happen is they're going to tell you stop wasting their time. And it's happened before. So it's not like I don't know what I'm talking about.
That is crazy. That's crazy. I'm just really happy like the police brutality has slowed down a lot. And it's obvious like the marching and protesting has helped, Yeah. And I'm just really happy it slowed down. I just hope it just keep how it is right now because it's just too much.
Yeah. And, my yardstick for how Biden's going to do has to do for me with criminal justice reform. Because criminal justice reform is something that this country needs. And if he doesn't put legislation in place to do criminal justice reform, then I'm going to think that he was not a good president because he said that was one of his platforms. And so we voted for him under that platform. And I'm talking about significant criminal justice reform.
Yeah.
The hate crime laws were one of the best things that ever happened to minorities. And by minorities, I mean, the sexual minorities, transgenders, Black people. If the hate crime law says you can hit me if you don't like me, But if you hit me because I'm black, the hate crime statute will put you in jail for 10 years. Where the other, if you hit me because me and you have an argument, you might not go to jail at all. And me neither. It's just a fight. But if you do it because you hate me because I'm Jewish or black or I'm transgender or something like that, the hate crime statute kicks in. And because there is such a large penalty in the hate crime statutes, a lot of people have stopped doing it. And it's even like the brutality of the police officers under qualified immunity, saying because there's no precedent for police officers being prosecuted, we can't prosecute them until there's a precedent for it. So under acquired immunity, they can get away with doing things that they know they shouldn't be doing. Yeah. So the acquired immunity, stand your ground, those things have to be changed. They have to be changed because sooner or later, black people are going to get tired of that. And then it's going to be a whole nother level of issues, because I am not, the gay people are not going back in the closet, and I'm not going back in the closet as a black man. So just get used to me being out here wanting to be mainstream and living life to the best of what my abilities can get for me, and not what you think I'm supposed to have. There have been black communities that have flourished and done great things, and then a white community will come in and burn it down and take it because we're not supposed to have that. I mean, what are you talking about? So we're not going to keep tolerating that, and you shouldn't want to do it anyway. So so criminal justice reform is my yardstick for what he's going to do as a president. We got to get rid of the COVID, and that I think they're doing a pretty good job with that. I had my shot yesterday, my first shot, so I'm a little bit under the weather with that, but that's okay. And so he has to get rid of that. He's got to get rid of some other things, but criminal justice reform should be, as far as I'm concerned, in his top 3 or 4 agenda items that need to be addressed in his first 100 days.
Definitely.
And I think he's doing that.
Definitely. I think he'll do everything that he said. It's just a process, and
right.
It's not him just signing everything over.
The funniest thing happened with Ted Cruz was interviewing Merrick Garland for the judge position, and he tried to get Merrick Garland to commit to not weaponizing the office that he was being considered for. Don't weaponize it and use it again, and let the president use you to go after his political opponents. So he actually said that, and I'm sitting there thinking the Bar Association was considering disbarring Barr, the Attorney General, for doing exactly that, and Ted Cruz endorsed it. So how do you try to come back and say something like that when for the last 4 years you have been endorsing somebody who's openly doing exactly that, and you have the audacity to stand up and say, "Will you commit to not doing that if I vote for you to be confirmed?" You're like, what are you? You're just a creep, a hypocrite. Don't. And for me, for somebody to stand up on national TV as a senator and try that, to me, that's grounds just to boot him out of there. I mean, how do you even say that? Because everybody knows what happened. There's no secret that Bill Barr was playing the role of the personal lawyer for the president. He said that I'm going to back the president in whatever he wants to do. So how are you going to agree with that as Ted Cruz and then come back and say, okay, now that you're in and we're out, we're going to ask you to commit to not doing that? Are you an idiot, or is he an idiot? Somebody's
an idiot.
Yeah, somebody's really not very bright, or they're slick and they'll just try anything. And that's how I see that man is. He'll try anything because he thinks he's brighter than everybody else, and he's not. But I'll leave that alone.
Yeah, let's get back to your book, because it's all about you today.
Right.
So, as far as your marketing, what type of marketing are you doing right now to get your book out there?
Well, I'm kind of a novice in social media, so I'm reading about social media. So I have a Facebook account, which is pretty easy to have. And then I've been studying Instagram, so I've kind of moved into Instagram a little bit, but I don't have the kind of streaming videos and advertisement things that I need to have for Instagram. So I'm going to look at, talk to people about using all of the social media platforms and learn how to do that. So right now, these interviews, when I do these interviews, my book sales go up. But that's not enough. That's not enough. It's going to have to be spread out across all these social platforms. So on TikTok, they get a little snippet and say, I'm going to read that. I have to design those snippets.
Yeah.
So now just word of mouth. Some of my, I did a podcast with the Black Student Union from San Diego State. There was about 20 of us on that. And then my book sales went up from that because people were watching it. So every time I talk and do stuff, it actually enhances my book sales. But, there's a company called Mahogany Books. I think it's one of the largest seller of African-American books in the country. I've written them. They required that I use another publisher called Ingram Sparks. So I put that in place.
Yeah.
And now I'm waiting for them to come back and say, okay, we like your book. You can sell it in our stores. But so far that hadn't happened. But, it was one of my classmates that I went to high school with that sent me an email saying, Ron, are you familiar with Mahogany Books? And I wasn't, because she lived up in D.C. And so I contacted them, and it was, there's a lot of opportunity there if you can get your book in that bookstore. So I'm learning how to market directly to bookstores, and because I worked for Fortune 500 companies as a corporate sales manager.
Yeah.
So I have that experience, but I have to take and apply my background to social media, and they're really similar, but they're two different animals.
Got you.
I can sit in front of the president of a major corporation and sell him whatever I want to sell him, but to sit in front of TikTok or Instagram, that's a horse of a different color, and I'm learning that arena as I go.
Awesome. I had to get my.
I understand you're pretty good at that stuff, so I'm going to be talking to you about.
Yeah, we spoke a little bit about it, and the good thing is you're in good hands because I do social media marketing and promotion and all of that. I also have ebook on that, and I also have a course on it. So when we finish this live, we could talk more about it.
Okay.
Yeah. So anything you'd like to tell the audience before you go? Just wrap up your book in, tell us something good and best, because you just drop knowledge. Like everything you say is so knowledgeable and it's so positive, and I love your good vibes you really are trying to reach the young black men and black men on the whole, and I think your book will do really, really well.
Yeah.
So
there's some value. What if I have a message to young black people? The people who have parents that are guiding and directing them, they need to read this book too. But it's not going to save their lives because their parents have already done that for them. But all of these people who are dropping out of high school and feeling like they have no future, they need to read the book and realize that there is a future based on if you just think differently and guide and direct yourself in more positive ways. Somebody's told me they wanted to buy a house. Well, I bought a couple of them, and I was talking to them about it, and they were basing it off of the wrong thing. And then I was able to tell them, well, if you want to buy a house, you need to design your house hunting and purchase power and understand what your purchase power is. And then that'll tell you what kind of house you can buy. But you're trying to go look at houses that are outside of your income capability because you don't know what your monthly payment can be that the bank will approve for you. So go get that first. So there's all kinds of knowledge, business knowledge that will help people become better citizens and function better in life if they just understand that that's all it is. It's just information that helps you function in this society based on some rules and regulations that if you don't know them, it'll just eat you up. The rules will eat you up because you don't know the rules. So take time out from your daily life about what you think, feel, and believe, and stretch your understanding to take in consideration things that you've never touched. There are people, I know people who they feel less than about something, so they're never going to step up in there and try. Well, if they meet me, I'm going to keep talking to them until they at least step up in there and try. And then they come back and realize, you know what? It wasn't as hard as I thought, because it's not as hard. It's effort in, progress out. With no effort in, there's no progress out. So life can be all around you in abundance. And if you don't tie into it, then the abundance will just be out there like a picture and not a part of your life. So if I have any theme that I would want to get across, it's like, just go try things that you want to do. Everybody has something in their heart that they want to do and they don't know how to do it. Take the first step. I didn't know how to write a book. I took the first step. Now I've met 5 people who had the expertise to help me and gave me the expertise. So go find, and the other thing is, if you don't have a mentor, if you don't have somebody you can go talk to about all of your feelings and beliefs, get you one. It doesn't have to be somebody that loves you. You can walk up to a man, an older man, and say, you know what? I need to know some more things about life. Do you mind talking to me? And most Black men will talk to you. And if you don't like where their perspective is, we'll find another one until you do. Just because somebody says do A, if you don't agree with that, then go find somebody and talk to them until their conversation fits whatever it is that you feel inside. And then develop a relationship with that person, not to become their family or get money from them, but just so that person, you have somebody that can answer your questions. When I ran away from home when I was 17 years old, it was a lady who I didn't know told her son to tell him to come and live with us. And I went and lived with them and graduated from high school. Then I joined the military. But I don't know what would have happened to me if that lady didn't say, come and live with us. And she gave me a home because she believed I was a decent human being. So go find people who have things going for them and ask them your questions. And if you don't get the good vibe from them that you want to get, go ask somebody else until you find somebody that can mentor you in the way you want to be mentored. And I think that's the real key to success.
Awesome advice once again. Awesome. Do you want to give the audience your email and your website?
Yeah, my website is just my name, Ronald T. May, author.com. And my book is on Amazon and on Ingram Sparks. And so if you put in Screaming Blackness, it's popping up now. And it's popping up in places, which is amazing to me. That's just so fun.
That's amazing.
It's Screaming Blackness, Ronald T. May, author.com. And then that's my website. Come up. And then I'm on Instagram. So if you put in Screaming Blackness on Instagram, it'll pop up my name. So and I probably have only covered about 1/10 of what I got to cover. But I don't understand it as well as I'm going to understand it. So my advice to step out and find people like you that can mentor me. I'm doing the same thing that I'm telling people to go do. And when you find somebody that you meld with, you got something going, as opposed to sitting around just talking about how terrible life is. Because you're not going to be able to do that with me. Because I'm gonna tell you, I don't know life like that.
I like that. Sometimes that's we need people like that around us.
Yeah,
to always motivate and push, and I try to empower and inspire people all the time. As much information as I could give somebody that could help them, I try to give it to them. So it's good to be like that. Don't change, because people need people like you around them.
And if you're a struggling young person and I wasn't educated real well in high school. I could read and I thought I could read. And then one day the ombudsman in college told me, you don't read well. And I was offended. And then come to find out, when I took a speed reading class, I was reading real slow because they put me on the slow part of the machine. And when it was a 6-month class, when I finished that class, I could read a 800-page book in a couple of days. It wasn't even hard anymore. So just the speed helped me be able to keep up with the workload. Without the speed, you can't keep up with the workload, and so you'll fail. And you're failing only because you don't have a skill. You don't have a skill to read effectively, and you don't have enough vocabulary to do it. But hell, if you go and you work on reading faster with these machines and these reading scenarios that are out here in the world, in 6 months, you'll be able to read very well, and your vocabulary will be better. I don't do it so much anymore, but I studied with a dictionary because there was so many words that when I read them, I had never heard of that word. And if you don't know the main word in a sentence, you have no idea what the sentence says. You know what all the ifs and does and wheres, but if it's a simple word like xenophobia, and you go, you're like, you're dead in the water. And if you look it up, you go, okay, they're talking about people who are scared of people of color. It's not any heavy concept. It's just a word that you're unfamiliar with. And the world in the dictionary is full of words that you're unfamiliar with. Yeah. And the more of them you get, the faster you can read, the easier life gets. And that's just a fact. Gotcha. No matter what color you are. Yeah. If you can't read effectively, you're going to struggle. Unless you want to do skilled stuff, be a carpenter, and then you still need to know how to measure things and use the tools of the trade so it comes out beautiful and not lumpy and wavy and all that.
Oh my God. So guys, please go on Amazon and buy Mr. Ronald T. May's book, Screaming Blackness. Please go and get the book. It's very informational, educated, and it's a lot of great advice. So thank you, Mr. Ronald, for being here. I appreciate you so much. Yes. And you have a blessed and a magnificent day.
Well, thank you for having me. And, this is a joyful world to me. So I appreciate it. And, I tell you this, my middle son was just accepted to Mayo Medical School.
Oh, wow.
Yesterday.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Yep. So that's a huge deal. I'm just ecstatic about that. And, he said one time, I don't have to spend a lot of time trying to figure out who I am because my father has told me who we are ever since I was born.
Oh, wow.
And I know that's what I said. I go like, okay, you was at least listening to that.
Yeah.
So I was very touched by him saying that,
Yeah.
So
amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And
thank you for being here. Thank you so much. And I wish you all the success in the world. And I can't wait to hear your sequel. I know you're going to be out there on the big screens. I know.
Yeah, well, my next book is going to be called Screaming Just to Survive.
Oh, see? Amazing.
So I got about 4 or 5 things deep in that already. And, it's
amazing. You are amazing. You are amazing, amazing, amazing guy.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. You have a blessed and awesome day.
All right. You take care.
All right. You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in today. That was Ronald T. And he has his amazing book called Screaming Blackness. Please go on Amazon and show some support, show some love, buy his book, share it, and I know it will bless somebody. It will definitely bless somebody because it's amazing. Thank you guys for tuning in once again. Join us every Thursday as we bring you new guests, new amazing people, businesses, entrepreneurs, musicians, and also don't forget to become a sponsor. Sponsorship starts as low as $1 a month. Become a sponsor and it will keep us elevating. It will keep me going and pushing and bringing these amazing people every Thursday. Thank you guys once again for tuning in. Blessings.
Thank you for tuning in. If you're about upliftment and entrepreneurship, this is the place for you. So hit the subscribe button. We thank our sponsors: Canvas Queen, All Legends Cleaning Service, Majesty Auto Repair,